Welcome to today's podcast. Thanks for joining me and spend some time on the Perennial Pride podcast, and I really appreciate you as listeners. So today, as we're getting close, we're about a couple weeks away from the Super Bowl, and I love football. It's something I grew up playing. It is a sport being an undersized kind of guy, it was probably not always the best fit. I'm sure, I don't know. I see my wife now watching my son play, causes her to cringe, and that happened for my mom too. It's a definitely a tough sport, but it's fun, and it's something that's always been part of my life. And I'm really excited about it. And it's a game where it's a finite game, right? It's something that is a game that it will come to an end at some point, right? At the end, maybe it goes in overtime, who knows? But there's an end and there's a score and there's a finish to it, and then we start again a new season. So it's finite, and so that's a pretty structured game, and it's centered around a certain set of rules, and you know who's playing. Conversely, there's a concept that Simon Sinek sort of I believe he sort of initiated as a book he wrote, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, called the Infinite Game, and it's a game where there's maybe it doesn't have a specific end. There's players that can enter the game whenever it happens, and so there's no definitive structure to all of it, and you continue to play, and there's no end. You keep on playing, and the goal of the game is to continue to play. And it's a totally different concept, and certainly I would encourage you to read it. It certainly would change, I think, your thinking and give you a different perspective on life in general. It isn't just about business, even though it's centered around leadership. But what I take from that is recognizing what kind of game we're playing in our lives, right? And certainly in our personal financial lives, because without understanding the game we're playing in, it's kind of hard to understand whether we're winning or losing, or what are we playing for. And it's easy in our world with so many distractions, so many pressures to just kind of get through lives and weeks. Sometimes we can easily lose sight of what game we're in. And I would argue that through most of my sort of adult life growing up and playing in the system, that I was playing a game of follow the leader. I think there's a lot in the personal financial space that you have a lot of large entities, groups, corporations, etc., and even you can argue the government involved with this are leading the charge in creating the game that we're playing for most Americans. And we've been sort of not provided a level of education to really take control of our own personal finances in a lot of ways. And so we follow what the typical path will be, right? What has been marketed to us and shared with us throughout our growing up. And so it's so complicated that we can't do it on ourselves. And so that's a game that leads to, I think, a different outcome, and we kind of know who the winners will be. And this goes back to something I've shared in previous podcasts on some of the rules that even our financial institutions play. Whether it be banks, insurance companies, you name it, brokerage homes, that they want our money. They want it coming in as consistently as possible. They want to hold it for as long as possible, and then when we want to use our own money, they want to trickle it out in as little amount as possible. And so, in the end, this keeps it under their control. I mean, and there's nothing nefarious about it. It's just the way that they've built their environment to be able to do that and control more of our wealth, and certainly in a lot of ways enrich their business models, right? And help them achieve what they were trying to achieve. So I don't fault them. I don't think they're bad people. It's just the way it's set up. And so for most people, they're not really completely in control of their wealth. And so this is where, even through my learning and understanding of it, that there's definitely ways to do that, right? To kind of take back a lot of control. And we talk a lot about that in this podcast. So a lot of it is even just opening up our minds quite a bit and recognizing that, as we're growing up and learning about finance, one thing that I think everyone universally shares is that we are lacking in terms of financial education for us to take control of our finances. I think, and some people say it's on purpose. I don't know, maybe it is. So be it. I think it's still incumbent upon ourselves to seek it out and test theories and explore and be open minded and not assume what everyone tells us is right. Right. I'm not going to tell you everything I tell you. You should just take with the truth. You got to investigate it for yourself as well. That's our individual responsibilities to do that, to ensure that it's best for ourselves, our families, and what we care about. And so I think back about growing up, learning about, well, basically not learning about finances, and kind of what I did, what impacted me though along the way, and through my adulthood into now, like what are some of the games that have impacted me, and what did I learn from them? I just find it fascinating to explore, and certainly what I hope it brings out is a little nostalgia, especially for those who are a little bit older like me, but also to emphasize that there's education out there. You do have to seek it out though, right? And be proactive and take responsibility to doing it, because if you don't, then the chances are that most of it will not be funneled through us to us, and it will leave a lot of people without as many options or knowledge of what to do. And that's just a reality. So it is really incumbent for all of us to kind of take charge. But I digress. I'll say, listen, when I was growing up, we didn't talk about finances. It wasn't something that our family was something actively talked about, other than as a child, I needed money and it seemed my parents were great. They would give it to me and I didn't have to work for it. I was given it. And so I probably didn't have a lot of respect for it growing up. And I think my parents just didn't, they were not as educated as well on finances. So they shared what they knew, or what they didn't know, and did the best they could. Right? They didn't have the education around it as being immigrants and first generation here, and they weren't successful financially, even though they made a lot of money. Right? And so obviously making money is one part of it, but obviously stewarding it and growing it is another, and maintaining it and protecting it. So my first game that I remember growing up that had some financial arm to it, or was the game of life. And I assume it's still out there today. It was a iconic game when I was growing up. I'd love to play it. And it was, if anyone, who hasn't played it, it was like you had this little car that you were in, and you got married, you got kids, and all these things cost money. You had jobs, and sometimes you got lost your job. So you kind of traverse the path of life, and you didn't know what was going to happen. Right? There's things that you landed on that just sort of came out of left field, that happens in life, and it's just it was just a funny reminder. And I remember a couple things. One being that you could play the stock market. That was the investing part of it, right? And you would have this long rectangular sort of strip, and had numbers on it from whatever 0 to 9, something like that, and you would bet on the number, and, and that's how you made money, right, on the stock market. Right? It wasn't any investing per se, it was speculation. Now, again, granted, today I would say, most people are playing it, or it is probably more speculation than true investing. Investing, I think you need to know a lot more about it and increase your odds of success with least amount of risk. That's really more in my mind investing. People are speculating in the market, and listen, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you understand the game it is. But that was one thing that I remember. And then the second part about it was because of it was like going down a road, and it's windy, throughout the board, but you would land on weird things, whether they're tax related, your job, something insurance related. There's a lot of unique things that would happen in life, and to get you to the end. And so what I learned from that too, and I take this to heart these days, is life is ever changing. This concept of impermanence, which I talk about often, is that life is destined to change, for good or worse. And so it's something that we all need to be prepared for, expect, and build up the right mindsets and approach. And certainly from a financial level, get our ducks in a row, whether it be estate planning, insurances, whatever, asset protection, whatever it is. There's a lot of things around it, but getting those solid, so that you can face life, and still thrive in those unexpected times, or be able to take advantage of the times when there are opportunities. We talk about the emergency funds that we want to have available for things that are bad that happen, like a roof or whatever, needs to be replaced. But I also get more excited about, hey, I've got cash on the side as opportunities present themselves to me that I can take advantage of, while others cannot because their money's tied up in retirement accounts or stuck in their house or wherever it is, that we have ample money to do the things where others cannot and withstand the pain when they're eventually come. So that's a game of life. That's what I remember. The second game that obviously I played during childhood that today I still play, I like to play with my kids from time to time, and is still, I think, very popular in all different fashions, was Monopoly. And obviously, for those, I think virtually everyone knows about Monopoly, played it. But for those who maybe have never played it, which I guess is possible, it's was based on property, like buying property and then renting them out. And so you own the property, and people land on your properties and they pay you rent, and you can build upon them to make them more valuable. During the course of it, you might get thrown in jail occasionally, or have to pay some unique taxes, and there's some chance opportunities to kind of do some fun things. So I love that game. It's always still iconic in my mind, and there's really a lot of good strategies around it. And really, what I really took from it, I always wanted to be the banker. So this is kind of one of those weird things that I always wanted to be the banker. I wanted to control the money, and in this day and age in this world, that's what a lot of the money that we're used to. Where does it go first? It goes into a bank, and and they control our wealth, and they give us little for it, although today they might give a little bit, and then they loan out and use it to spur their profitability. And so banking is such a core element of our lives, and we obviously teach a lot about that to secure and take ownership of the banking function in your life in some way over time. There are ways to go about doing that, but really that was one part I remember. But second, really the really big aha with Monopoly was the building of assets, right? Obviously, and delay and sort of delayed gratification. We live in a world of consumerism and buying and consume and maybe not as much around producing. And this in Monopoly, what is needed to win is to be patient, because you got to buy assets, build them up over time, expand, make them more valuable. You trade up from four houses to a hotel. These sorts of concepts take time, and you got to have patience with it and recognize that it's going to come with diligence and being sort of continue to go around this journey around this board. And that's the same thing in life, right? A lot of people want to get rich quick, right? What's the quickest path? I think the quickest path to wealth is having a long-term vision of it, a long-term view, and having the ability to compound wealth and build assets over time. And more importantly, build assets that produce for you, right? Produce rents and produce other cash flows so that you can benefit, right? And use those cash flows to buy more assets. And that was really a big key. And then, obviously the concept of monopoly is building more wealth and assets over time that can do that. So really fun game. I always enjoyed it. It was a something that from time to time I usually like to revisit. So the last game that now is a little bit more advanced, and I don't think a lot of people have heard about this game. It's called Cashflow Classic. Now, anyone who's familiar with the writings and philosophy of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, will know this game, right? It's a really great game. It's I played it with my kids when they were younger, and we do play it from time to time. A little more advanced than certainly Monopoly, but I think it's kind of advances what learned in Monopoly. And it really touches on the concept of getting out of, he calls it the rat race. And that is, you get a job and you're making salary and you have all these expenses. And if you're not, controlling it, your basically expenses will start basically exceeding your income, and then obviously that's a recipe for disaster. So the idea behind this, and the thing I really like about Cashflow Classic is, one, it does really stress concepts of financial education, right? What's an income statement? What's a balance sheet? These things are kind of boring potentially for people, like for normal Americans who are not in the finance or accounting professions, but it's basic concepts around profit and loss and managing your assets and liabilities. These are fundamental things for people, and obviously reinforcing the need to have positive cash flow, right? That's really, everyone talks about net worth and that's it, but really cash flow is what we use to eat, use to live our lives. That's what we need to maximize. Yes, having bigger net worth helps us to do that. But if it's not generating cash flow now, or to me, not as valuable. So in this game, a cash flow classic is, you're trying to secure assets, right? And we have the draw of, or the allure of buying doodads and things in our lives that keep us from building up more cash flow. And the idea is to have your cash flow from all your assets that are producing in different ways, whether it be stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever businesses, that they're bringing much more cash flow to exceed your basic needs and your expenses. And then that would lead to financial freedom, right? And that's a different concept than what we are taught in this day and age around just storing up money, accumulating it for someday and work at a job you may or may not love, or hey, just so you can retire and live off those assets, right? Someday. And so to me, that is what I bought into, and just never felt like it was the best way, right? At least for me, who wanted a little more control and freedom on my money and my life. And so Cashflow Classic really was trying to instill the philosophy that, hey, if you wanted to, if you could actually have cash flow cover your basic expenses, then you are essentially not having to work a job that you hate, right? Hopefully you find something you enjoy and love and you just do it forever anyway, that infinite kind of concept. But most people will take a job and kind of just live with it and not be happy with it because they have to use it to pay the bills so that one day they can, use their money and enjoy it in retirement. I mean, to me, that's just deferring life. And I think we owe that to ourselves to at least explore opportunities to get that freedom now, to enjoy it now, because although time may seem like a long time in life, I think we waste a lot of it, and I surely did. And when I reflect backwards, and what I want for most people is to live a fulfilling life, to do some things of meaning and contribution on this, or get to it sooner than later, because we don't know when that clock will stop ticking for all of us. And our contributions on this earth, the legacy we leave, isn't just money; it's how we've impacted others in this world. And I don't know about you, but I want to maximize the heck out of all of that, right? Because I don't know when this day will end, when I'll graduate from this earth, but I want it to be, I want those who are left behind after I've gone, to have some level of impact and have made them better in some way, right? We contribute to our society in some way. And I know most people do too, but when we get caught in a sort of this rat race, it may be hard to do, right? Just time wise, money wise, and etc. So Cashflow Classic to me is a game you can continue to play and play, and it just reinforces, I think, just a different perspective on life, our money, and something that I would highly encourage you to go out and seek out and play. And I think you'll learn quite a bit. So that's all I wanted to share today. Hopefully, it was at least interesting, entertaining. Those games are great, and I think they all should be shared with kids in some way and play with them, because I think it's really good to help build financial education and talk about money more, right? It allows you to talk a little bit more about money in a less scary manner, and hopefully teaches some good lessons that people can build their knowledge base around financial education, so they can drive the course of their lives to their highest level of fulfillment and success on their terms. So thanks for joining me today. Certainly, if you enjoyed this, share this with others you think you might benefit, and certainly continue to follow us on here on the Perennial Pride podcast. We really enjoy doing these and sharing things I hope will be helpful along your own personal financial journey and life journey. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it, and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life, and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.